Matt Chapman is puzzling. It's a puzzling situation in Oakland altogether, but I get asked a lot. In the last episode, I tackled the A's group of potentially available trade targets: Manaea, Bassett, Montas, Chapman, Olsen, maybe Murphy, Trevino in the bullpen. Like maybe they just sell everybody. But the one that I get hung up on when it comes to what the asking price, what a fair asking price might actually be, is for Matt Chapman. And that's because he was really good in 2018 and 2019. He was a 6-win player both years. He was a 139 WRC plus 1 year, 125, I believe, the next. He's been an average hitter in the one full season he's played since, which was just this past year, 2021, batting average all the way down to 210. The thing that struck me about his profile is how much more he's swinging and missing and striking out. But overall, he's very difficult to nail down. Matt Olson's pretty easy. He's healthy. He's performing. He's peaking. Age, control years. Like it all makes sense. And you can come up with at least a range in terms of what his trade value is. It totally makes sense. The selling team's not going to question it. The buying team's not going to question it. We're not going to question it. But with Matt Chapman, it's so much different. And it seems like it's not just because of that hip injury, although the hip injury may have led us to all these performance questions that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think the hip injury plus the uncharacteristic line from Matt Chapman this year, and he didn't lose the power. He just kind of lost the ability to hit the ball.
Cover 34% strikeout rate.
Yeah, he could not cover the top of the zone this year, which was very odd. He'd never really had that problem. The question on Chapman's value is really, really interesting to me because I think, I go back and I look at the what was the deal I was looking at the other night? The JT Realmuto trade from 2018. Yep. And that got Sixto Sanchez and a couple other guys, Jorge Alfaro and a right. throw-in. Right. I don't think Oakland's going to go that route. I think Oakland, and we've talked about this, I think Oakland is going to go a quantity route over a quality route. And maybe kind of like what the Cubs did with Yu Darvish. I threw out the idea on a Slack that Connor Phillips, Levi Stoudt, Víctor Labrada, and Milkar Perez might be able to get that deal done.
And if it doesn't, then just hang up the phone, because
that's where I'm at too. Yeah, I mean, if you want to center it around Brandon Williamson and throw in, Labrada and Luis Crivello, fine.
Sure,
but
sure. Yeah.
I wouldn't give up more than those 4 top 30 prospects, and I think that's where Oakland's going to go because they're in no rush to compete. Right. Take the quantity.
I think the questions, and I addressed this in the last episode, but I think the questions that I think about, and that Seattle would have to think about is, okay, we feel comfortable paying for a 3.5 win player because that's what he was last year, pretty much at his worst. How much more comfortable than that can we actually be? And the fact that Chapman's going to make about $22, $23, $24 million over the next 2 years, including somewhere between 9 and 10 million in 2022. My medical staff is going to be involved in this decision. My hitting coaches are going to be involved in this decision, strength and conditioning. I want to know how many other times we've seen somebody with this hip injury have these problems. Did they come back from it? Like every sport, like that's how deep I'm going into this, because you're talking about trading, and granted, you're not trading George Kirby or Julio Rodriguez or, anybody significant from the big league roster in a deal like this in that package that you were just talking about. But if you're talking about Williamson or Stoudt plus guys that are from the teens and the 20s in a good system and what might be the best system in baseball, that's a lot to give up. I think you have to feel really confident before you pull the trigger on a deal like that it's not going to continue to get worse. I think that's the big thing. If he continues to go, and to be honest with you, if I'm telling you right now, if it's going to cost you, what was the first deal that you mentioned, like the Phillips, and what was that one?
Yeah. So it was, let me just pull it up to make sure I get it right. It was Stoudt. It was Connor Phillips. It was Milkar Perez and Víctor Labrada. And I'll tell you, Jason, when I threw it out there, most people responded with, I don't think that would be enough. And my gut reaction was, I'm not doing anything more. I'm uncomfortable sending that.
That's too high for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's too high for me, but I get it. And at the end of the day, I might pull that trigger as long as somebody in my organization that's a lot smarter than me doesn't say, you don't want to do this. This guy's 28, but his hip is 38. Like, you know,
and he's going to be 29
in April, 2 years of control. It's going to make about $24 million on the high end. Do you want to spend that kind of capital for 2 years of Matt Chapman and not actually, because Chapman would not, as essentially heading into 22, if you assume he's the bat he was last year, you don't have your big bat. So now where do you get it? I'm not saying don't go get Chapman, but now that's a question. Like, you didn't get your big bat at second, at least not yet. That's Frazier. And if you go get Chapman, you just went defense for the most part and added, you know, average offensive players at those two positions. How much better did you actually get in that scenario? So, well, in a vacuum, I'm totally with you. Like, Stoudt and Phillips, probably both of them is a little much for me, but overall, like, I totally get that package and I would probably ultimately pull the trigger. But considering where Seattle is today, yeah, I'm not sure Matt Chapman is even in my top 10 to go get at this point. Like,
I think it's important to look into the future a little bit too. I mean, he's going to be, by the time his deal expires, he's going to be 30. He'll be 31 in his first free agent contract year. With a history of a bad hip. I mean, if you're Seattle, I would think if you're Seattle and you're looking to acquire Matt Chapman, in the back of your mind, you've got to be thinking extension. And do you really want to pay a third baseman with hip issues, you know, years 31 through 35? I don't know. I mean, that's a tough call.
Probably not.
And maybe there's a team out there that's willing to pay the prospect capital with the assumption they're going to extend him. I don't know if I would extend, especially with Noelvi Marte on the way. It's depends on the prospect capital going to Oakland, I think.
So I preach this quite a bit. When you trade for a player, you're not trading for the option to extend him. You're trading for the control years that come with him and the performance, the perceived performance. The extension part is just something that you get if you're the team that acquires that player. You get that option. You get the ability. Exactly. You get the ability to go to him and say, hey, do you want to stay here? 2 years of Matt Chapman, 2 years of an average offensive third baseman and a very high level premium defensive third baseman. That's the max for me. That's the absolute max for me. I was talking about like doing, you know, Williamson and Truman. Hey, it's Jason Churchill. To get the full episode, as well as every other episode of the podcast, past and future, subscribe for as little as $5 per month by going to bit.ly/getthepod. That's bit.ly/getthepod, all one word. A link you can also find on my Twitter profile. Hey, thanks for checking out Baseball Things.